You know what's wild? Right now, there are people making six figures who are one bad month away from financial disaster. And there are people making $45,000 a year who could lose their job tomorrow and be completely fine for 6 months, maybe longer. The difference isn't income. It's not even necessarily how much they have saved. It's something way more fundamental that almost nobody talks about. Look, I was talking to a friend last week. Guy makes about $120,000 a year, and he told me he's losing sleep over the economy. Every time he sees a headline about layoffs or a potential recession, his anxiety just spikes. And I asked him, okay, so what happens if you lose your job? And he just stared at me because he genuinely didn't know. He had no plan, no system, just hope that everything would work out. And here's the thing, that's not a financial problem, that's a preparation problem. And we're gonna fix that today. My name is Ryan, and I spend way too much time thinking about how to recession-proof your finances. If you're someone who lies awake at night worrying about what would happen if the economy tanks, or if your company announces layoffs, or if your industry just suddenly changes, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because what we're going to talk about today isn't just about surviving a recession, it's about building a financial life where you don't even have to worry about it. So let's start with something that's going to make you uncomfortable. According to the Federal Reserve's 2023 data, 37% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 emergency with cash or its equivalent. 37%. But here's where it gets really interesting. When you break that down by income, you find that this isn't just a low-income problem. There are households making over $100,000 a year who are in the exact same boat. Now you might be thinking, Ryan, how is that even possible? And that's exactly the right question to ask, because it reveals the fundamental mistake that almost everyone makes when they think about recession-proofing their finances. They think it's about earning more money. It's not. It's about building what I call financial buffer zones, and most people have exactly zero of them. Here's what most people don't realize. The reason you feel financially anxious isn't because you don't make enough money. I mean, maybe you don't, but that's actually not the core issue. The core issue is that your financial life has no shock absorbers. Every dollar that comes in is already spoken for before it even hits your account. Your rent, your car payment, your subscriptions, your groceries, your student loans, and on and on and on. And so when something unexpected happens, and look, unexpected things always happen, you've got nowhere to absorb that hit. Let me break down the 3 buffer zones that actually recession-proof your finances. And I want you to notice something as we go through these. Most financial advice focuses on the first one and completely ignores the other 2. And that's why most financial advice doesn't work. Okay, so the first buffer zone is what everybody talks about. It's your emergency fund. But here's where everyone gets it wrong. They'll tell you save 3 to 6 months of expenses. And then what do people do? They either give up because that sounds impossible, or they calculate their monthly expenses, multiply by 6, and think they're done. Here's the thing, that number is meaningless without context. Let me show you what I mean with actual math. Let's say you make $5,000 a month after taxes and your expenses are $4,500. You've got $500 left over. Financial advice says save 6 months of expenses, so that's $27,000. At $500 a month, that's 54 months, 4.5 years. And most people see that math and just give up. They think, I'll never get there, so why even start? But look, that's the wrong way to think about it, because recession-proofing isn't about hitting some perfect number, it's about creating breathing room. Here's the psychology shift you need to make. Every $1,000 you save is 1 week of freedom. Every $4,000 is a month where you can tell your boss exactly what you think about their management style if you need to. So here's what you actually do. Forget the 6 months number for now. Your first goal is $1,000. That's it, just $1,000. Because here's what nobody tells you. The psychological difference between having $0 saved and having $1,000 saved is absolutely massive. It changes how you think. It changes how you negotiate. It changes how you sleep at night. And once you have that $1,000, your next goal is 1 month of expenses, not 6 months, 1. And here's why this matters. A JP Morgan Chase Institute study looked at actual bank account data for millions of people. And you know what they found? Most financial shocks that people experience, the unexpected car repairs, the medical bills, the temporary loss of income, they're resolved within 30 to 45 days. So if you can cover 1 month, you can handle probably 70% of the financial emergencies that are going to come your way. That's not perfect, but it's infinitely better than 0. And once you have 1 month saved, then you go for 3, and then 6. But you're building this incrementally, celebrating the wins along the way, instead of treating it like this impossible mountain you'll never climb. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because most people think recession-proofing means saving more money, but there's a second buffer zone that's actually way more powerful and almost nobody builds it, and that's income diversification. Look, let me ask you a question. If you lost your primary job tomorrow, how many sources of income would you still have? For most people, the answer is 0. Maybe 1 if you count a spouse's income, and that's terrifying, because what you've done is you've built your entire financial life on a single point of failure. Here's the math that should scare you. Let's say you make $75,000 a year from your job. That's about $6,250 a month. Now let's say you get laid off. Your income doesn't drop by 20% or 50%, it drops by 100%, instantly. Everything goes to 0, and now you're trying to find a new job while your savings are draining away and your stress is through the roof, which, by the way, makes you worse at interviewing. But let's look at a different scenario. Same $75,000 a year in total income, but this time you make $60,000 from your primary job, $10,000 from a side business, and $5,000 from some investments or a small rental property. Now you lose your primary job. Your income drops to $15,000 a year, or about $1,250 a month. Now, is that enough to cover all your expenses? Probably not. But here's what changes. Instead of going into full panic mode, you've bought yourself thinking time. You can be strategic about your job search. You can negotiate better because you're not desperate. And you can probably make up some of the difference by temporarily increasing your side business income. This is where the psychology of money gets really fascinating. There's this concept called loss aversion, and basically we feel losses about twice as strongly as we feel equivalent gains. So losing your entire income feels catastrophic, but losing 80% of your income while keeping 20% feels manageable, even though in pure dollar terms you're not that much better off. Now you might be thinking, Ryan, I don't have time for a side business. I'm barely keeping up with my regular job. And look, I get it, but here's what most people don't realize. A diversified income stream doesn't have to be a massive time commitment. It can start with just 3 to 5 hours a week. Let me give you some concrete examples. I know a graphic designer who spends 3 hours every Saturday morning creating Canva templates that she sells online, makes about $800 a month basically on autopilot now. I know an accountant who does taxes for 5 small businesses during tax season, makes about $5,000. I know a teacher who tutors 2 kids for an hour each on Sunday afternoons. That's $200 a week or $10,000 a year. The point isn't to build a massive empire. The point is to build redundancy. Because in engineering, you know what they do with critical systems? They build redundancy. They don't put all their faith in one component being perfect. They assume things will fail and they plan for it. Your income should work the same way. Okay, so we've talked about cash reserves and income diversification. Now let's talk about the third buffer zone. And this one is the one that nobody wants to hear about, but it's actually the most powerful. And that's expense flexibility. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people's expenses are way less fixed than they think. They've just gotten so used to a certain lifestyle that they can't imagine living any other way. And I'm not talking about cutting back on groceries or never having fun. I'm talking about understanding the difference between committed expenses and discretionary expenses, and ruthlessly minimizing the first category. Let me show you what I mean with some real numbers. Let's take a typical middle-class lifestyle. Monthly income after taxes, $5,500. Here's how the expenses might break down. Rent/mortgage, $1,800. Car payment, $450. Car insurance, $150. Student loans, $300. Credit card minimum payments, $200. Phone, $80. Streaming services, $50. Gym, $40. Internet, $60. Utilities, $150. Groceries, $500. Gas, $200. Restaurants/takeout, $400. Entertainment, $200. Clothes, $150, miscellaneous, $270. That adds up to $5,000, with $500 left over for savings. Now, here's the question. In this budget, what can you cut immediately if you lose your job? And I mean immediately, like within 1 month. The streaming services? Sure, that's $50. The gym? Maybe that's another $40. Restaurants and entertainment? Okay, that's $600. Clothes and miscellaneous? Maybe half of that, so $210. So in total, you can cut about $900, which means your monthly expenses can drop from $5,000 to about $4,100 in a crisis. That's an 18% reduction. Not nothing, but not exactly recession-proof either. Now let me show you what expense flexibility actually looks like. Same $5,500 income, but here's how someone who's actually recession-proof structures their expenses. Rent, roommate situation, or a smaller place, $900. No car payment, bought used with cash, $0. Car insurance, $150. Student loans, $300. No credit card debt, $0. Phone, budget carrier, $30. No streaming services, uses library, $0. No gym, works out at home, $0. Internet, $60. Utilities, $150. Groceries, $400. Gas, $150. Restaurants/takeout, $100. Entertainment, $100. Clothes, $100. Miscellaneous, $100. That's $2,440 in monthly expenses, which means they're saving $3,060 a month. And here's the thing, at that savings rate, they'd have a 6-month emergency fund, $14,640, saved in less than 5 months. But here's where it gets really interesting. Let's say they lose their job. What can they cut immediately? The restaurants, entertainment, most of the miscellaneous, even more from groceries if they really need to. Their expenses can drop to about $1,900 a month. So with their emergency fund, they can survive for 7.7 months without any income at all. But remember, they've also been building income diversification, so they probably have at least some money coming in. And if they can replace even $1,000 of their lost income, their emergency fund now lasts for almost a year. That's the difference between financial anxiety and financial peace. It's not income, it's structure. Now look, I can already hear what you're thinking. Ryan, you're telling me to live like a broke college student. I didn't work hard and build my career to live with roommates and never go out to eat. And I get it, but here's what you're missing. I'm not telling you to live like this forever. I'm telling you to build this as your foundation. Think about it like this. What if you lived like this for 2 years? Just 2 years. You build up a massive emergency fund, you start some income diversification, you get out of debt, and now from that position of strength, you can start adding back in the lifestyle upgrades. But you add them back in strategically, not impulsively. You move to a nicer place, but maybe you still have a roommate. You go out to eat, but maybe 3 times a month instead of 10. You buy a nicer car, but you still buy it with cash instead of financing it. And here's the psychology shift that happens. When you've experienced financial security, when you know what it feels like to have 6 months of expenses saved and multiple income streams, you start valuing that feeling more than you value the temporary happiness from lifestyle inflation. Because you realize that the anxiety of financial instability is way more painful than the pleasure of a nicer apartment or a fancier car.
Okay, so let's put this all together into what I call the recession-proof formula. And I want you to write this down because this is the framework that actually works. Step 1, calculate your monthly survival number. This is the absolute bare minimum you need to survive each month. Not comfortably, not with your current lifestyle. Survive. Roof over your head, basic food, essential utilities, minimum debt payments. For most people, this number is 30 to 50% lower than their current spending. Write down that number. Step 2, build a 1-month buffer. Your first goal is to save 1 month of your current expenses, not your survival number. This is your breathing room, your I can think clearly in a crisis fund. If you can save $500 a month, this takes 8 to 10 months for most people. If you can save more, it's faster. Step 3, start income stream number 2. Before you build up the full 6-month emergency fund, start developing a second income stream. It doesn't have to make a lot of money yet, it just has to exist. Spend 3 to 5 hours a week on this. The goal is to make $500 a month within 6 months. That's completely achievable for most skills and situations. Step 4, Reduce your committed expenses. Look at every single monthly payment that's locked in for more than 30 days. Your lease, your car payment, your subscriptions, your insurance. When each one comes up for renewal, ask yourself, can I reduce this or eliminate it? Move to a cheaper place when your lease is up. Sell the financed car and buy a reliable used one with cash. Switch to a budget phone plan. The goal is to get your committed expenses down to 40% of your income or less. Every dollar of committed expenses you eliminate is a dollar of flexibility you gain. Step 5. Build to 6 months. Now you go back to building your cash reserve. But here's the thing, because you've reduced your committed expenses, that 6-month number is way lower than it used to be. And because you've built income stream number 2, you're saving faster than you used to. What might have taken 4 years now takes 18 months. Step 6. Diversify further. Once you've got 6 months of expenses saved, you can start getting more strategic with income diversification. Maybe you develop income stream number 3. Maybe you start investing in dividend stocks or rental properties. Maybe you build your side business to the point where it could replace your primary income if needed. The point is, you're building layers of protection, multiple income streams, substantial cash reserves, and flexible expenses. That's recession-proof. Let me show you why this matters with some real math, because when you see the numbers, it's kind of shocking. Let's compare 2 people over a 5-year period. Both start with the same income, $60,000 a year or $5,000 a month after taxes. Person A follows conventional lifestyle inflation. They spend $4,800 a month, save $200. After 5 years, they've saved $12,000. They have 0 additional income streams. Their committed expenses are $4,000 a month. If they lose their job, their money lasts 3 months. Person B follows the recession-proof formula. They keep expenses at $2,500 a month, save $2,500. After 5 years, they've saved $150,000. But wait, it gets better. They spent year 2 building a side business that now makes $1,000 a month. They invested some of that money, and now their investments generate another $300 a month. Their committed expenses are $1,500 a month. If they lose their primary job, their passive income covers half their expenses, and their savings could cover the rest for 8 years. 8 years versus 3 months. That's the difference. But here's what really blows my mind. Person B isn't making more money from their primary job. They're not some genius investor. They're not lucky. They just structured their financial life differently. They built buffer zones. They created redundancy. They prioritized flexibility over lifestyle. And here's the thing that nobody talks about. This changes your career trajectory too. Because when you're financially secure, you can take risks. You can turn down a job that's not right. You can ask for a raise without being terrified of getting fired. You can start that business you've been thinking about. You can invest in learning new skills. There's this study from the University of Warwick that found that people who report high financial security are 31% more productive at work. 31%, because they're not constantly stressed about money. They're not distracted by financial anxiety. They can focus on actually doing great work. And doing great work leads to promotions, raises, and better opportunities, which leads to more income, which reinforces the whole cycle. It's a positive feedback loop.
Now look, I know what you're thinking. You've got objections, and I want to address them head on, because if I don't, you're going to use them as excuses to not do this. Objection 1. I don't make enough to save that much. Look, I get it. If you're making $30,000 a year and your rent alone is $1,200 a month, the math is brutal. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that saving is easy when you're in that situation. But here's the thing. The recession-proof formula still applies. You just have to be even more aggressive about the income diversification part. If your primary income isn't enough to build substantial savings, then building additional income streams isn't optional. It's essential. And yes, that sucks. It means working more hours. It means sacrificing your evenings and weekends for a while. But the alternative is staying in a position where one bad month destroys you. And here's what I've seen over and over again. When people in low-income situations start building a side income, something shifts. They start seeing opportunities they didn't see before. They start building skills that make them more valuable. And within 2 to 3 years, they're not in that low-income situation anymore. Objection 2. I have kids, and you can't just cut expenses when you have kids. Actually, kids make this more important, not less, because now it's not just about you. It's about making sure your kids have stability even when things go wrong. And yes, kids have expenses that you can't cut. But here's what I found. Parents are actually really creative about reducing expenses when they decide it's a priority. Buying secondhand, doing activity swaps with other parents, choosing affordable entertainment options. And by the way, teaching your kids about financial resilience is one of the best things you can do for them. Kids who grow up watching their parents make intentional financial decisions, who see that you can be happy without having everything, who understand the value of financial security, those kids grow up with a massive advantage. Objection 3. Life is short, I'm not going to deprive myself for years just to save money. This is the objection that frustrates me the most, because it completely misses the point. This isn't about deprivation, it's about intentionality. It's about understanding what actually makes you happy versus what you've been told should make you happy. There's this study from Princeton that found that beyond about $75,000 a year in household income, more money doesn't increase day-to-day happiness. What does increase happiness? Financial security, autonomy, not feeling stressed about money, being able to handle unexpected expenses without panic. So when you frame this as depriving yourself, you're getting it backwards. You're depriving yourself of financial peace so that you can have a lifestyle that doesn't actually make you happier. That's the real deprivation. All right, so here's what you're gonna do. Not someday, not when you feel ready, today, this week. Here's your action plan. This week, calculate your monthly survival number. Sit down, look at every single expense, and figure out the absolute minimum you need to survive. Write that number down. Calculate your current savings rate. Income minus expenses, what's left over? What percentage is that? Write it down. List one skill you have that someone would pay you for. Just one. Writing, design, teaching, organizing, fixing things, whatever. Write it down. This month, open a separate savings account if you don't have one. This is for your emergency fund only. Transfer whatever you can into it, even if it's just $50. The psychological effect of having a dedicated emergency fund is real. Cut one committed expense, cancel one subscription, negotiate one bill, make one change that reduces your monthly committed expenses. Bank that difference. Do one income-generating activity outside your main job. Doesn't matter how small. Walk one dog, tutor one kid, design one logo, sell one thing. Break the seal on income stream number 2. This quarter, get your emergency fund to $1,000 if it's not there already. Do whatever it takes. Sell stuff, pick up extra work, cut expenses, whatever. Get your second income stream to $200 a month. That's your next milestone. Doesn't sound like much, but $200 a month is $2,400 a year. That's real money. Reduce your committed expenses by at least 10%. Look at your big 3. Housing, transportation, debt. Make a plan to reduce at least one of them when the opportunity comes up. This year, build your emergency fund to 1 month of expenses. This is your foundation. Everything else builds on this. Get your second income stream to $500 to $800 a month. This is where it starts to really change your psychology. Get your committed expenses below 50% of your primary income. This is the tipping point where you start to feel real financial breathing room. Years 2 through 5, build your emergency fund to 6 months. At this point, you're probably saving $1,500 to $2,500 a month between reduced expenses and increased income, so this happens faster than you think. Develop income stream number 3 or scale streams 1 and 2. The goal is to have income from sources other than your primary job equal to at least 30% of your primary job income. Get your committed expenses below 40% of your total income. This is recession-proof territory. At this point, you can handle pretty much anything. Here's what most people don't realize. Recession-proofing your finances isn't really about recessions. I mean, yes, it protects you if the economy tanks and you lose your job, but that's almost beside the point. The real benefit is the way it changes your relationship with money and work. When you're financially secure, when you've built these buffer zones, when you know you could handle losing your job, everything changes. You stop tolerating bad jobs. You stop accepting low pay. You stop putting up with toxic work environments because you can afford to. And weirdly, that makes you more successful because people can sense when you're negotiating from a position of strength versus desperation. There's this concept in negotiation theory called the BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Basically, it's what you'll do if this deal doesn't work out, and the better your BATNA, the better deal you can negotiate. When you're living paycheck to paycheck with no savings and no alternative income, your BATNA is terrible. You have to accept whatever your employer offers because you have no other options. But when you're financially secure with multiple income streams and substantial savings, your BATNA is excellent and you can negotiate accordingly. I've seen this play out so many times. People who build financial security end up making more money in their careers because they can afford to advocate for themselves. They can afford to wait for the right opportunity. They can afford to walk away from bad deals. That's the real secret. Recession-proofing your finances isn't about hiding from the economy. It's about building a financial life that gives you options. And in career, in relationships, in life, options are everything. Look, I know this is a lot. I know it probably feels overwhelming. But here's the thing, you don't have to do everything at once, you just have to start. You just have to make one decision today that your future self will thank you for. Maybe that's transferring $50 into a savings account. Maybe it's canceling a subscription you don't use. Maybe it's spending an hour this weekend thinking about how you could make an extra $200 a month. It doesn't matter what it is, it just matters that you do something. Because here's what I've learned from years of studying personal finance and talking to thousands of people about money. The people who succeed aren't the ones who make perfect decisions. They're the ones who make decent decisions consistently. They're the ones who understand that financial security is built through small actions repeated over time. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be moving in the right direction. Save more than you did last month. Build a new skill. Create a new income stream, even a tiny one. Reduce an expense. Each of those actions is a step toward recession-proofing your life. And look, maybe the economy is going to tank next year. Maybe it's not. Maybe your company is going to have layoffs. Maybe it won't. Honestly, it doesn't matter. Because if you follow this framework, if you build these buffer zones, you're going to be fine either way. And that's the whole point. The goal isn't to predict the future. The goal is to build a financial life that can handle whatever future shows up. So start today. Pick one thing from the action plan and do it. Your future self, the one who doesn't lose sleep over money, the one who can handle whatever life throws at them, that person is counting on you to make the right decision right now. If this video helped you out, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content on building real financial security. Drop a comment and let me know which buffer zone you're going to focus on first. And I'll see you in the next one. If you think Netflix, apps, and memberships aren't costing you much, think again. Watch this video and find out how subscriptions quietly drain your money every month. Click now.